Hey everyone, it's Alex Ball with a special Roundtable episode of the No-Till Market Garden Podcast. On today's show, I sit down with three special guests, Kolin Buzerak of Starry Farm and Caitlin and Simon Yevzelman of Cedar Farm, to discuss the barriers and common realities for those getting into the industry, as well as the sacrifices required to sustain a farming business long-term. We dig deep on connecting with your community to sustain your business, diversifying your income streams, and unique ways of accessing the land around you. I hope you enjoy this experimental group format as we try and tackle some of the real issues of breaking into the small-scale farming scene. So without any further ado, let's get to the discussion.
Today's episode of the No-Till Market Garden Podcast is brought to you by Farmhand. Tired of admin work and technology trouble? You need Farmhand on your team. Farmhand is the all-in-one software platform and virtual assistant built by and for independent farmers. Through a simple text or email to Farmhand, you can instantly offload admin tasks, automate your CSA, update your website, and sell more to your customers. With zero startup costs or long-term commitments, farmers are reporting an average of 6+ hours in time savings and 20% in sales growth each week. Learn more and take the quiz to see how much you can save by partnering with Farmhand at farmhand.partners/no-till. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. Today's episode is also brought to you by Local Line. Get ahead this year with Local Line. Make the switch to Local Line and grow your farm to new heights. Local Line is the most comprehensive sales software built for farmers and food hubs. Increase your sales and streamline your process with features including e-commerce, inventory management, subscriptions, website builder, online payments, point of sale, and more. Trusted by thousands of farmers around the world, Local Line is the platform you need to take your farm to the next level. Subscriptions start as low as $49 a month, and Local Line never takes a percentage of your sales. Try Local Line today and receive a free premium feature for 1 year using our coupon code NOTILL. That's all caps, all one word, NOTILL. All right, enjoy the show.
So one thing we were talking about earlier, kind of before we got to recording, was kind of that initial push into farming, acquiring land, getting on the land for the first time. So maybe for all of our listeners, maybe we can go around the table and folks can just kind of say the name of their farm real fast, where they're located, and kind of how long they've been on their property.
I'll start up here. My name's Kolin Buzerak. My girlfriend Kat and I run Starry Farm. We're in upstate New York, right on the Vermont, Massachusetts, and New York border. We've got 125 acres, and we have about 1.5 acres of market gardens. We also do grass-fed beef, pastured pork, pastured layers, maple syrup, and I do carpentry and excavation work on the side as well.
Fantastic. Simon and Caitlin?
So we're Simon and Caitlin Yevzelman. I have to change my last name still, but it'll get there. We're recently married. We just signed a lease in March on Cedar Farms, which is in Belleville, Michigan. We're cultivating, 1/4 acre? Market-style garden beds and some greenhouses, just doing veggies, herbs, some mushrooms, and flowers this year.
Cool. I stopped by your farm the other day, and I also saw online you just got a new hoop house as well. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah. NCRS grant.
Fantastic. It looks really nice. How large was that?
It's a 32 by 70.
Wow, nice. That's fantastic.
Yeah. So it was really nice because the landowner did the whole grant process and we just came help put it up. So it was really awesome.
That's super cool. Also, maybe you can go into that a little bit. So you're saying the landowner applies. Yeah. So how does your land section work?
So we actually, maybe I could take it back a little bit. Me and Caitlin have been looking for some kind of an opportunity in agriculture for about 1.5 years now. I have been farming in a different style for about 7 years now. First doing commercial scale recirculating aquaculture. So we were growing steelhead trout, and I was just managing that farm. Got lonely, came home to Michigan, and I was able to work for a vertical farm here in Detroit for about 5 years. I was director of food safety, but I really helped build the company. And after that, me and Kaylin really wanted to get into farming together. And so we were using Michigan FarmLink, which, if your listeners aren't familiar with, is a website designed specifically to match landowners with land stewards, people who want to farm and people who want land. And it's a great website. I wish there were more listings on there, but there are a few. So we spent last year investigating a poultry farm, a turkey farm that's on there, doing our due diligence, seeing if that was a business opportunity that we could undertake. It ended up not working out for reasons that we can go into later, but the current situation is we're leasing from a young man named Thomas Lodge, who is the owner of Cedar Field Farm and owner of that property. He started there doing CBD hemp right when that industry kind of took off in Michigan and had a few successful years. Obviously, that's not really commercially viable on a small scale anymore, so we switched to veggie production. This year, he's got a different vendor going down in Toledo, and he didn't want to see his land sit fallow. So Kaylin and I were just so lucky to find it. It's 30 minutes from our house in Dearborn Heights, and he's been a really great landowner, which I'm sure Alex wishes he had in the past. Somebody who's like really willing to help us succeed. Whether it's time, knowledge, resources, whatever it is, he's been really, really helpful. So yeah, he applied for that NRCS grant. I didn't have to touch paperwork, which is always my favorite thing. I just had to show up and help tighten down some bolts and pull some plastic, and we're off to the races. We got a nice tomato and cucumber greenhouse.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and like it's funny you said that. You had somebody there who wanted to see you succeed, and I think the fact that they're on the FarmLink website, the fact that they're out there trying to find farmers shows that they're a very pro farmer. I remember when I was first looking for farmland, when I was trying to lease, I had so many people who were like, "Yeah, you can farm my land, but I want half your profits." And I remember someone saying that to me and being like, "This is a farm, man. How much money do you think this is pulling in? Like, you'd be better off just taking a rent from me. You'd probably make a lot more."
Do you want to do half the work as well? Like,
so yeah, it was definitely that. It was hard to find that place to land. So you find this FarmLink property. And did you all envision in the long term, doing vegetable production, or was it kind of like, this is the opportunity right now? We can get in the scene, we can get moving. What were kind of thoughts on where you were landing?
The timing is everything. Like Simon said, we spent a full year and a half evaluating, I think, 3 different agribusinesses, and I was very hesitant to do land and just start a farm from the ground up. Like, I don't know much about farming, but I know that's a lot in terms of a business, and let alone the other things within farming that you can't control. And just, it seemed like a lot to take on. So I think, again, timing was everything. And like, we dropped everything once we signed this lease and just studied vegetable farming. Like we're going to make this work. This is our test year. We're really committed to making it work.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And it's that commitment that I think you really need in ag, because let's be honest, no one's really here for the paycheck. If we can hopefully make a living, pay our bills, and take care of our families, I think that's what we want. And it's kind of the same thing I said earlier. It's like it's the idea like, oh yeah, give me half the profits from this farm. It's like, hey, listen, you'd be better off just taking, $200 a month, some guaranteed sales. Because this is especially the veg game.
Right.
There's a lot of ups and downs. And Kolin, you were saying earlier, the animal pressure at your place is intense, right?
Oh yeah. For pest pressure, I mean, all around from bugs up to deer and even bears and stuff. We've got. Not so much. We've never had any issues with bears other than a couple trash cans getting knocked over. But a lot of the honey producers and people that have backyard beehives, I mean, bear will come up, swipe all this one guy that's got a cider business right over the hill from us. He's had a bear, which is a monster bear, come in and knock his hives out 2 or 3 times so far this season. And it's just, But yeah, for us, for fencing, we have to have at least 8-foot tall deer fence around all of our garden beds and all of our garden space, or the deer are probably going to get in. And then, everything all the way down to woodchucks and rabbits, things like that. And then, of course, bug pests, which are a lot harder to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, how fast can one animal come in overnight and just wipe out weeks and weeks and weeks of work and just one swell swoop?
Yeah. Crush every hope and dream you ever had in one fell swoop. It's pretty rough. Yeah. And every bed, you kind of analyze that bed and you've kind of figured out, oh, this one's going to be about this many bunches of this, or this many harvests of this, or this many of this, or that many heads of lettuce, or whatever. And all of a sudden you're like, I just lost $500 tonight. I don't know what to do. Like, what do I do? And then you just, and it's one of those things where you just kind of got to step back, reevaluate, figure out the way to make that system work and just not fail over and over again, and just find a way to kind of work with nature and put something in nature's way at the same time.
Yeah, you said I think also it's that compounding effect of when you have one night $500 loss, you're like, oh, this is horrible, this is the worst night ever. But then it's when it starts compounding, happening night after night after night, is that's when the real loss starts piling up, and you really have to start taking that problem solving gear. And I don't know about you all, but I feel especially in July, when there's so much going on, when the markets are going, the irrigation needs to run, and now there's a groundhog you can't find that's just eating 2 plants a day. You're like, it's not a big deal, but now it's 3 weeks later.
Yeah, it starts out slow. All of a sudden you're like, oh, I think there's a couple missing there. And then the next day you're like, oh, there's definitely some missing there. And then the next week you're like, oh my gosh. It's all gone. It's all gone. All of our peppers have been eaten.
Yeah. And a lot of folks know that this last year I had a hailstorm in the spring that knocked out half of my production. So all my field production, my tunnels were saved, and they're full of peppers. We do a lot of sweet peppers production for wholesale. And then 3 or 4 months, maybe 3 months later, when they were fully loaded with red peppers, ready to go, 5 feet tall, trellis, beautiful, we hit with a flood that laid them all over. Then all that fruit got contaminated with water. So we had 2 back-to-back losses, upwards of $20,000 each time. And this last season, I had taken out some more loans because I wanted to scale my business. I wanted to keep doubling down because I think for myself, was in more of a survival mindset where I had to keep doubling down to get to grow our gross sales so that I can pull more for my salary. And we'd leveraged so high, I'd never guessed we'd have 2 total wipeouts in one season. And now I've kind of come to the conclusion, not that this don't happen again, but I had to be financially planned for this to happen again. And for me, I know this is easy. It isn't not easy to do, easy to say. I just realized I have to have more capital, more savings for the business sitting there waiting, which is the hardest thing to do when you're trying to grow a business, especially if you don't have a lot of money. Just let it sit there. But I kind of realized for me personally that if I play it this close and try to scale so heavily, so quickly, that I'm at a risk, with especially don't having capital to back that up. I need to be much more careful with our growth.
Yeah.
And you mentioned loans. Sorry, go ahead, Kim.
Oh, I was just going to say, your story, you've overcome so much adversity, and I just don't. Have you ever felt like you were at a breaking point, and how do you keep overcoming it?
Yeah. Oh man, Kayla, that's a great question. I think that this last 2 years, I've seen an active change in my, not attitude, but in my drive. Because after a decade of just not gonna lie, just getting kind of shit on constantly over and over again, and especially if there was some silver lining to it, if I was making tons of money, I could deal with that. I could take getting beat up if I was getting but I think the only thing that really kept me going all those years is the fact that I could look at my business plan, I could look at our increase in sales per year and look at where we're heading to and say, okay, we're on this track. if by this point I will be able to pull this much more out of the business to keep going for myself personally. And the only thing that kept me going was that every year we hit those numbers. You know what I mean? Like, even through all that loss, we were still hitting those numbers. And it's like, I wouldn't lie to people and say there was a point, where I was making $200 a month and living in a tent on the farm. And that's just what it was. That's just the reality. But now I have an apartment and I make just a little over minimum wage, which isn't much, but when you're used to making $2 an hour, making $9.50 is a big jump in lifestyle. So I think being able to see that incremental growth has kept me in there. If I didn't see the incremental growth, I probably would have stopped. Because it's kind of poor to run a business, I would guess.
Yeah, the numbers got to make sense. Yeah.
You mentioned loans, Alex, and I was hoping there was a little opportunity to talk about it because obviously that's one of the first places that people are going to turn to when they want to start their own agriculture business, right? Not all of us can get lucky enough to have a low-cost loan or, family land or things like that. And so that when me and Kaylin were looking to purchase one of those ag businesses that we were looking at up north, first thing we're like is, okay, obviously we don't have this kind of cash. What loans are available to us? And it was, it's kind of a roller coaster ride. You're like, oh man, look at all these USDA, FSA loans, beginning loan, young farmer loan, underserved farmer loan, all this stuff. And then we go to the fine print and it's like, oh, you can't have a decent credit score. You know what I mean? And, me and Kaylin have worked hard to retain good credit scores because that's what they told us to do, right? So then we're looking at loans that are all of a sudden not designed for us. And I'm just kind of wondering who really they are designed for. And, I'm sure there are people who fit that definition of have experience running a farm, lots of experience, right? I think it's like at least 2 years in some of them, the drive to do it, but like a terrible credit score and no funds whatsoever. So it was really difficult for us to look at that. And then you look, those are FSA USDA loans, so the rates are a little bit better, but you look at conventional loans and that's out of the realm of possibility for a lot of people with interest rates being at 10-something% right now. So that was tough for us and why we got so lucky with the lease option and why that I think can work really well. And I think coupling, as far as the transition, the land transition story goes, if people are willing to, work with people who want to transition the land to get them the experience, to get them the knowledge they need to do it. And maybe those people then fit into those loan programs, they'd probably be a lot more successful. But it's tough because it's, obviously USDA FSA, their mission is to keep farmers on the farm. But it's only broke farmers that they kind of want, or farmers who are not good at managing their money when they were or weren't farming. So that was a kind of a tough pill for us to swallow, was be like, okay, we're too financially sound to get a decent loan, but not, we don't have enough money to do this without a loan. So we're in this weird gray area where it's like, I don't know, take a conventional loan, which is much less likely than FSA because of the risk of farming.
Yeah, and Kyle, I want to talk to Colin about this 1 second, but I want to make one point then I want to turn to Colin. I remember I went and applied for an FSA loan, and I remember what they said to me. I went in, and like you all, I had been from 18, I was like, I need to have a good credit score because if I don't, I can't survive. So I went in there, and they said, you don't qualify for this loan because I had at a local credit union, I had like a loan out from a credit union for something else. They said, since it shows you qualify for those loans, we can't compete in the open market, so we can't give you that loan. And I said to them, like, well, they're only going to give me a $5,000 credit limit, and the interest rate, this is 2013, was 8.5%. And I was like, so I can't take that. That's not gonna work. But luckily, my realtor got me connected with a local farm credit service, who, they're technically they're nonprofits that work. I think technically they are. I'm not sure. Mine's a cooperative. I'm not sure how they're all structured. But they were the only ones who were willing to even work with vacant land or ag land at that point. So it was kind of those things where it's like, if I didn't have a local ag bank, if I didn't have a realtor who knew about this certain thing to get me this program and apply, and if I hadn't had 5 years of tax records, a business plan, all these little things are there. Like, I say this not in a mean way. I think he took pity on me. And I really think the loan agent saw someone who was just like you said earlier, some drive, some proof of a business model. And they're like, listen, we're loaning him $12,000. If he fails on this, like, what, what's the deal of this? But Kolin, you and I were talking earlier about a lease opportunity that you were working on, and kind of mimicked in my head what Simon and Caitlin were talking about, of like creating those relationships with those in your community to hopefully transfer those leases into possible land ownership.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So this lady that's down the road from us, that's got a really nice little flower stand. She and I have talked in the past about the potential lease opportunities of a piece of her property. So, kind of the backstory of the land that we're farming, it's the property that I grew up on. At the moment, I'm leasing part of the land from my parents and also living on the land. But we also, through my parents, we were able to purchase another piece of property that's down on our main road, which is going to be our storefront. So that is a really short-term mortgage through my parents. So, fortunately, we were able to. They happened to have the capital at the time. My grandfather had passed away, and some inheritance had gone to my mother, and it wasn't a lot, but it was enough to secure this small piece of property. But they want the money back. They don't want to wait 15 or 30 years. So it's like, it's a 5-year term, and so it's heavy payments every single month. So that that in itself, with the lease of our property on top of it, it's a lot to juggle, and it's a lot financially to manage. But fortunately, I've got other opportunities to make money off the farm as well as the farm, which we have been growing. We have been picking up more outlets for sales and everything. So this is when I kind of started talking to this lady down the road about potentially leasing her fields. She's got about 10 acres of a nice flat river bottom farm. All of our farm that I grew up on and that we are farming is all on a slope, and like an aggressive slope in a lot of situations. So everything's terraced, everything's worked. We don't have flat land where we can chisel out perfect blocks of beds and have the simplicity of that. So that's something that we've really been working towards. And the property that we bought does have that opportunity. So we're going to be able to focus on that, but we also want to be able to increase production even more so, for many reasons, mostly to be able to hire more help and also to hopefully make a salary ourselves one day as well, instead of just shoveling it out to the few people that work for us, as well as, the lease and the mortgage and equipment and everything else that goes into the farming season. So yeah, I'm gonna try to work with this lady down the road. We've been family friends for a long time, and she's really, really interested in the land staying in agriculture. It's actually under an agriculture. I can't remember the program that it's under, but it's basically like ag land forever kind of thing, where they can't suck it up, they can't turn it into anything else. And a lot of this area has been put under
conservation easement.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, a lot of the farmland throughout our valley has been put under these easements and all this, so they can't break it up. They can't subdivide it, which is a wonderful thing. But she loves the things that we're doing with the small scale, regenerative, no-till aspects and intensive market garden kind of stuff. And she's really into it. She wants to see that, as opposed to right now, it's just like forage crops and occasionally corn, which hasn't been there in a while. It's mostly just forage crops where they come and chop it and take it away to a heifer operation that's down the road. But yeah, so I'm going to try to work with this lady to potentially at least start leasing it, and then hopefully lease to own in the future, which would be, great. But it's one of those things where it's a few more miles down the road. It would mean that I would have to put, tens of thousands of dollars of infrastructure in down there just to get started and just to have the crops be safe enough to where we could actually secure a profit off of it and secure produce. And so that's kind of something that we're going to kind of sink our teeth into, hopefully this coming year.
Yeah, I remember. So for those who don't know, Kolin and your partner Kat, we were early guests on the podcast, and when you're talking about the payments you were making, like, it's intense. And there's one thing that you have in your Instagram bio that I loved. It says entrepreneur, and I like that because you guys do so many things in the sense that you're just hustling so hard, and there are those who it's a real dedication it takes to actually scale the farm, keep enough capital in to get to the spot where it can turn a profit. And it really does take it often does take just not working on the farm to other outside capital flowing into it to prop it up enough to then eventually one day turn a profit from that farm.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And from another hustler, that's an absolute honor. That, so appreciate it. And that's the reality of this kind of farming and farming in general, but especially the stuff that we're all kind of focusing on, this like kind of the niche markets and the quick turnover crops and all this stuff. It's like, you have to hustle so much just to keep up with the work of the actual farm. But there's times when you've got to wait months before you see anything come out of the work that you're doing today. And you've got to be able to float that, and you got to be able to keep up with all the payments. For us, it's almost $4,000 out the door every single month with payments and mortgage and lease. And, that's before buying any extra groceries, which fortunately we don't have to buy too much, but it's like before anything, before gas or anything. Like, we've got $4,000 going out the door every single month. And it's just, and that's going to increase more and more as we try to scale up. So yeah, it's a tough thing to juggle all that. But, fortunately, my parents, I grew up building houses, and like, that was kind of my, between that and like food and bev industry with, when I was traveling and moving around the country a lot more and everything, I would just pick up a restaurant job, or I always had tools, carpentry tools, so I could just show up to a job site or find a person that was interested in hiring me for the summer or whatever it was. And you got to be able to just kind of, it's daunting because you're like, oh, I have to take on so much more just to get to the point where I want to be, where then I can focus solely on the farm. So fortunately this year, Kat is basically 100% on the farm. I'm still taking on a little bit of off-farm work, but like way, way less than I've had to in the past, which is really cool.
That's fantastic. So, and I know, Simon and Caitlin, you also do off-farm jobs, which are also very ad-related and business-related. How do those apply? How do those feed back to your farm business now?
Yeah, I'm just doing some farm auditing, some third-party contract auditing, which is okay. It brings in a little bit of money. It's not a ton, but every day I'm doing this, I'm not on the farm. And so that makes it a little bit tough, but I think Caitlin can speak more to it because, I've been farming, not for myself, right? I've been an employee at farms, but I think it plays much more into Caitlin and her desire to transition into more of it. So I'll let her speak about it.
Yeah, I mean, we've only been doing this since March, so 2 months, and I feel a lot of guilt for not being at the farm, but knowing that, I don't know a single couple we've talked to, or a single farmer actually, who's not mentioned that off-farm income is necessary. So I have a little bit of a golden handcuff situation. We're trying to work through it. I guess we'll see how this coming month goes, because I know with markets and everything, I'm really not going to have time to be tied to a desk. And if we're going to make this work, I think I really do need to commit to it and figure out, a different solution for that off farm part.
Yeah, it's a hard balance to like. It's the golden handcuffs. You said it perfectly. Or it's like, I need money to live, but I also need the farm to grow. If to be happy in that career, if I want that to happen. So it's simple.
It's the happiness thing. Yeah.
It's just a more fulfilling, like I've been at my career for like 15 years now. I'm very comfortable in it. It's what I know. And so transitioning to, like just harvesting and making a sale, like I don't know how to do that. That's all nervous. I feel a little impostery, but like it's important work and that gives us so much more purpose. And we said when we got married, we were going to do this, like we're going to try it out. So the balance is hard. Totally.
And I feel that like this last year when we moved our business and we changed some things up, I had to do more off-farm work. And for me it was hard, but luckily I've been able to work on other farms who also supply our CSA. So it's nice because I'm also like engaging with my community, talking to my customers, so making plans while we're planting. But it's hard sometimes to be at someone else's farm, helping them grow, do their thing, or whether it's a farm or whatever. And then it's like, man, my farm, there's so many weeds right now, it's piling up. But I know that like I need to do the right thing for my business and for me personally, so that I can do what I want to do and what I love in the long term.
Yeah, I think we're very lucky that at least we have, each other. It's not just, I'm sure doing it alone is a mountain I can't imagine climbing.
Yeah, totally. And I'm pretty lucky. My partner is now joining me on the farm, not doing farm labor, but helping me with like our smidge of marketing, community engagement. Because that's how I found it's like, man, I can't let my mind do too many things. I have to have some support on the other side of that. And like for me, the longest time, it was hard to bring people in and let people take things over. But I'm trying so hard to be better at that. And I think so much of it too is just it's like a reactive like survival instinct. Like when everything's on your shoulders and you don't want to lose what you've worked so hard for, it's so scary to like hand those things off to other people. But the reality is that like I'm not doing that thing well because I'm doing everything, so I need to allow that to happen, knowing that I hired a new worker in our pack house, which I always need someone there anyways. But the new person I hired, I was just blown away at their speed. It was something so small, how fast they were. And I was like, man, the energy they come in with this is like so much more energy than I can even bring because my mind is in 10 other places right now. Their fresh mind comes in and just nailed it hard. It's like, man, even though it was expensive, the labor, especially in our areas, labor is pretty expensive. Like, man, it is worth it.
Yeah, it makes a difference.
Makes a huge, huge difference.
Today's episode of the No-Till Market Garden Podcast is brought to you by Harnois Greenhouses. For more than 55 years, Harnois Greenhouses has led the way in controlled environment agriculture innovation, partnering with market gardeners and farmers across North America to deliver comprehensive commercial greenhouse solutions. Their mission is clear and steadfast: to pioneer a greener, more resilient future for agriculture. At the heart of their success is a commitment to their community of producers with extensive expertise in design, manufacturing, and installation. Harnois Greenhouses provides the best greenhouse solutions to the grower across North America. Their greenhouses are engineered to face any North American climate, ensuring unparalleled brightness, agronomic performance, faster return on investment, and lasting durability. They're not just building greenhouses, they're creating energy-efficient ecosystems that promote sustainable and profitable agricultural practices. With over 20,000 projects to their name, they're more than a manufacturer, they're a partner. For the initial design to the final installation, Harnois Greenhouses is with you at every step, guaranteeing the success of your venture. Harnois Greenhouses, leader in turnkey solutions for local growers. All right, back to the show.
I was hoping to talk about, because Kolin mentioned the conservation easement. I don't know if it'd be okay to talk about that for a second, Alex.
Sure, 100%.
Because when we were looking at this farm that we were hoping to buy last year, that was one of the things that came up was, okay, maybe we can put a conservation easement through Grand Traverse Land Conservancy, and then some of that value can go back to the landowner, and then our upfront cost is a little lower, but it's a double-edged sword because all of a sudden the value of our land has reduced. Because if we have to up and sell it, guess what? It's just a lower value. It has limitations on it. So, I just wanted to make that comment because it's like we all want to see all farmland stay farmland forever. But we can't do that by reducing its value. We need to do that by raising its value in terms of agriculture, by having good production being done on there rather than just, your corn, soybean, wheat rotation.
I totally agree. And that, like you said, it's like a total double-edged sword where you're like, all right, but what I'm doing, and I think that there's a huge lag in the USDA and like all these other agencies that are like, they haven't really taken into account the type of farming that we're doing now. We're like, it's not a like a reduction kind of farming where like we're reducing the labor on the land, we're reducing the whatever, this money spent on the land, and we're trying to just increase all of our profits, and in doing so, destroying the land itself and actually making it less valuable, which is unfortunately the way that a lot of these farms go. It's like, in reality, they are kind of becoming less valuable because even when they do have better practices, a lot of the practices are those conventional style farming practices that are kind of a little bit degrading in a lot of ways, very degrading. And then I don't think that they've taken into account, obviously they haven't taken into account the type of farming we're doing, which is so, I don't want to say input heavy, but it's adding so much to the land, and we are increasing the value. And I think that I think that's something that I'd like to see in the next 15, 20 years, is that be recognized as well. And like that kind of input that you're putting into, and the fertility that you're bringing, and the health that you're bringing, or the perennial plantings that you're bringing that are reducing having to till or there's a lot of spraying here. There's a lot of, Roundup use still, where they're just going in and torching a field and then just turning it straight over into soybeans, or turning it a lot less soybeans, but a lot of corn or forage crops, alfalfa. They'll come in and just spray and you'll be looking at these fields like, oh my God, that's the most beautiful field of clover I've ever seen. And then 4 days later, you drive by and it's just torched, all yellow. And you're like, oh, I wanted to put my cows on that. Like, that's what I want. I was like,
just let something eat it.
And then it come in and torch it. And then all of a sudden there's corn planted, and it's like, all right, well, there's agriculture happening. I personally don't think that any agriculture is bad agriculture. I think that there's a lot of misguided agriculture though. And I think that, all these farmers, they do want to produce food for people. And no matter what, that's the bottom line. And that's a really honorable thing. And like you guys were saying that like, you're just getting into this, the farm, but like, it's so rewarding and so fulfilling. Like, wait until the end of the season when you look back at like March and April and May, and you're just like, I can't believe we slugged through that. I can't believe I made it through July. And now we're in August, September, October, and you're like seeing the end, like the light at the end of the tunnel, like, and you can get past all of that. Like, it's just like so much pressure and so much stress and so many things. You're thinking about thousands of lives every single day, like thousands, tens of thousands, who knows, like in hundreds of thousands in some cases, and it's like, and yeah, I think that's a way that I get through it, is thinking about November.
You said something really that spoke to me about not especially the USDA not really understanding the work we're doing, or kind of that kind of agriculture we're doing on the land. And I remember I was at my recent hearing, and my state head of the USDA came and talked to me. He's a very nice guy. And one thing I just kind of learned from our conversation and comes from other farmers is that a lot of these agents don't even really understand market gardening. They don't understand any type of especially a product that's not like 5 acres of strawberries, and funny, I have a friend of mine, Brian Bates up north, and he went to his agent, and he's one of the best small scale farmers around. And for a loan, and they were like, "What are you doing again? You're growing food and you're selling it to people." I don't know if that makes sense to us. And when I went to do mine, it was the same kind of thing. It's like, if I remember Simon said that earlier. It's like, who are these loans for? And I've kind of realized that the loans are really for people who, it's a family farm, it's been there for few generations. You need a new silo, you need a new sprayer, you need something. You roll up to your USDA guy. You've known him for, his family knows your family. You've known each other for that. His farm next to your farm. You go there, you sign your loan for $40K. You get your new trailer, whatever, and you go back to your farm. And that's really how the system, I think, is meant to work, which is fine. And it needs to support those growers. We need to support those farmers as well. But it is hard then to adapt to serving the small scale growers. And one thing kind of popped in my head when I had my flood and I had in my hailstorm, I could have had a crop policy to protect those products. But the thing is, it only covers. It takes an average of 3 years of sales, and then it gives you 75% of that. And as I said earlier to Caitlin, you asked, how did I keep pushing through? It's like, well, those numbers, I'm seeing our growth. And our business had grown so much every single year that in order to qualify for that crop loss, we'd have to make like a half of what we had made. We had to make nothing that year. We had to make $0 and then try to claim that at the end of the season. And it's like, well, I have to pay my bills still. I'm not going to stop working. So I had to keep hustling to save myself, and then hustle too hard. And I guess I'm too responsible. I can't get help now. So it's kind of that circular system of programs not being always designed for smaller growers. And I'll say one thing. I'll be quiet. I talked to some people who ran this program, and I asked them. I talked to them about making it more flexible, making it more user friendly, and kind of the consensus came down to is like, if we make it any more user friendly, we have fraud problems. If we start making this more so people don't actually claim they've lost, then we have people who abuse the system. So the system is just useful enough to be there, but not useful enough to like actually have widespread a change. That's how I feel about it personally, at least.
Yeah, totally. It's hard to be like such a moral person in like a world where people are happy to take advantage of it, and that's like, I feel like that's something that you can run into a lot where it's like, oh yeah, like, well, I would never do that. I would never claim something. And that's all you think about. And you kind of like get jaded to the fact that you're like, no, I care about my farm. I want to make sure that I'm profitable. I want to make sure I get up. And it's like, but there are people out there that are just like, oh yeah, we lost 5 acres of whatever. Claim that, till it under, spray it, plant something else, plant a cover crop for the year, whatever. We call it a wash, And yeah, it gets tough like that. I wanted to say one thing about, I think you started bringing it up earlier, Alex, about like a farm credit. So we've got Farm Credit East. I don't know if you guys have that. That's a regional. I think they go even down the East Coast a bit, but Farm Credit East is like a lending agency that does focus on just farming, and like the majority of their work is with ag, within the ag realm. And that's actually, my brother purchased just a vacant piece of land, which is less than a mile away from our farm that we're on. And he got that through Farm Credit East. And they did actually come out, and the guy that came out was, he was a little bit of like the big ag mindset. But we're walking around the hills, like walking him through the property and being like, well, we can do something like this here, and we can do something like that there. And there's a lot of opportunity, but it's not like we've got a 60-acre field that we can grow corn on this year and soybeans on next year and a forage crop on the next year, So, but I think that there are certain people and there are certain organizations that do have a better understanding of it, but it still is so hard to get past that. Like, also because like our farms aren't those $5 million dairy farms where there's a $2 million dairy barn and like silos and bunkers and everything that are just like everything costs $250,000. Like all the tractors cost $500,000. It's like all those things where it's like there's so much money in it, and then you're like, oh, I want $40,000 so that I can start up a farm. They're like, well, what are you going to start with $40,000? Like, how are you going to be profitable with that? Like you don't need, you mean $400,000, right? And like, well, no, I just want to do a 1/4 acre of intensive market gardens, and like you can turn a profit on that. but it's just kind of, I think there's just that big lag right now with that. But, there are people that do recognize it, and there are certain agencies that can help to some degree, maybe not always, and not for everybody, and not for every situation. And yeah, and it's a tough one. That's like a really tough thing to find. But yeah, if anybody is around, I mean, I know that they're around here, but Farm Credit East, they've got some really cool people, and they've been super helpful with my brother and his purchasing of a piece of property. And I know other people that have used them. I use them for my taxes. They do taxes and stuff too. So that's all I've had to use them for so far. But coming into this, like I was talking about trying to lease this piece of property, that's something where I would need $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 to dump straight on infrastructure with fencing and irrigation and a high tunnel, or at least some sort of garage space and tunnel space, because it's a few miles away from our farm, which it's not a huge, it's not a long drive, but it's like when you have to move a tractor down there, it's a big drive, or when you have to move the excavator down there to do something, and it becomes a whole thing. So having storage space down there would be good. And yeah, juggling all those little pieces and thinking of all those little pieces and making sure you don't forget all those really important little pieces that can pop up and ruin your day real quick.
Caitlin and Simon, you had mentioned a little earlier about trying to purchase a pre-existing business in the past, right? So like you said, it was almost like $500,000 just for the property. Like how much was it going to be, and what were some of your plans for funding if that had worked out?
We would have been divorced by now if we went through with that sale.
Yeah.
825.
They only wanted 225 for the business, which was a 46-acre turkey farm that has a max of 20,000 birds. Before you have to get them USDA slaughtered, right? But then, by the way, we want $600,000 for the property.
For the house and land.
And the business isn't much good without the property. Yeah, so it's like you have to have both. You either have one, or you have an existing turkey farm where you just want a book of customers that you pay $250,000 for, which is not worth it. So we were going to take, it was going to be like combination of FSA loan, potentially a Michigan Good Food Fund loan, potentially Hebrew Free loan. It would have been like 4 loan disaster nightmare is what it would have been. Yeah.
And just in general, land has appreciated so much that it's hard because the business was profitable, but it didn't support the loan repayments that you'd have to take on. And then there's all these other factors of like, we would be in the middle of nowhere. We would be so far away from our community. Like, we don't know how to poultry farm. Like, who can afford to come in and do this? I don't see an option except for like a larger poultry scale operation coming in and like buying that to add to their portfolio.
Yeah, totally. It's that. And I think that one thing I keep hearing from you guys, from both your stories over and over again, is like that value of kind of like working with not just trying to go and buy land, but like working with landowners pre-existing who has some education on the land, who know what's going on. And when I hear about like when I come to Caitlin and Simon's farm, and I hear about, you're farming under someone else's name, you're working with them. And I'm like, man, what a great way to enter into the local food network without like wasting tons of money, burning cash, trying to figure out what's going on locally. And I don't think too, like when Colin's talking about leasing this piece of land, it's like, well, who's going to know the history of this land? Who's going to know it better than the people who have already been there, been working on it? I just sold my farm property, and I didn't know the person who I was selling it to until we went and shook hands on the day of the sale. And I'm like, man, if we could have talked ahead of time and had some actual dialogue, and like it probably would have been a bit easier transition in that whole process. But just being able to like, in your guys' case, to come in with this other business and inherit and grow what they've already done, it seems like the real way going forward. And I think it's really hard for many growers, even myself, because when I first started, no one wanted to give me a piece of land. I mean, I could not get it to save my life. But the minute I owned farmland, the minute I was sitting down, everyone came out of the woodworks and apparently had land for Alex. You know what I mean? Everyone wanted to toss stuff at you, and then you had a property. So when we moved properties, it was much easier because, I mean, every week I was getting offers from people, hey, you want a piece of farmland? Want a piece of farmland? And I'm looking at my current status where I was at, and my payments had ballooned at my property. The amount of capital taken to maintain it and the labor was just ballooning and ballooning. And I quickly realized that I had built something that I couldn't financially bear. And also, like, kind of like, I put myself in a situation where I was so. Maybe it's a certain mindset of like it's a survival thing. Like, I'm safe now. I'm good. I don't know. I don't want to go anywhere else while I'm suffering here. I was like, I needed a push to get out there and do something else. And I'm so thankful I did, because now that I don't own that property, my rent with the cooperative I'm part of is just so affordable that I can now look at my business and be like, oh, I can see how this is going to affect us in the long term financially. And like, it's such a better financial move. Because back then, I wanted farmland so badly. And if you want farmland and you want to be in the farm, that's great. But you have to know that's what you really want. Like you said, if you don't want to move out far away from your community and be a farmer, with the two of you, with a divorce, if you don't want to do that, that's okay. That's cool. But like, I think a lot of people put it on a pedestal and think that that's the highest form of living, or that's how I'm going to be happy. And then get out there and realize, oh, wait a second, I'm broke. I'm away. It's hard.
Yeah, it's that whole cottage core vibe on Instagram right now. It's like, it's not like that. It's not all, fondue and fires. It's like, it's ticks and weeding.
That's a generational thing too. Like, many people before us having land, owning a home, those were all like signs of success, and that's how you've made it. So I think this newer generation coming up is understanding that, yeah, you can still rent. It's probably much more affordable than owning and a little bit less stressful. We are very lucky to be in this situation.
The other thing I was hoping Kaylin could talk about is, she, like golden handcuffs, she's really good at her current career and she's very successful at it. But at the end of the day, it's not fulfilling for her. But let's say we love farming. Let's say she quits and we love farming this year. And we're like, hell yeah, this perfect property came out. And it's this land was made for us. It's where we want it. Well, guess what? Neither of us have a W-2. Nobody's going to lend to us.
Yeah. No, you're totally right about that. That's a great point.
And we're very lucky, like before Simon and I met, we both own our own houses. We own a home together. We have assets. We've saved for retirement through our careers. Like I said, very, very lucky to be in the positions we are. But again, if you don't show that income, no one's going to lend to you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's back to saying earlier. It's like, well, I want to be in the farm. I want to be working. I want to build this business, but also I need to have income coming in from the other business to show that I can be responsible enough for a loan to then run a farm. It's like that.
Yeah. Crazy puzzle.
Yeah. I totally hear that. It's definitely a juggle to try and find how it's going to fit together financially to make those things work. And I think I tell people all the time is that like, you can't allow your ego to rule over what makes sense financially. Like when we had the 2 floods, I went on this train trip and I said, okay, I'm going to rework my business model. And I did. I went down there, reworked all our finances and made a plan. I said, okay, we have enough capital to last us 8 months. That's what we have. We have to make a move, and the move has to be done in 8 months. And I do all my stuff through QuickBooks, and I'm just watching my cash in and out, just watching the balance go down and down and down, lower and lower, and just being like, I trust the plan. I trust this is going to work, and we're going to be able to pull ourselves out of that. And we've done that. It's happened to me 2 or 3 times in our business because of major catastrophes and things like that. And if I hadn't sat down and worked out, projections for the next 6-7 months of where we're heading, I think we would have I think we could have easily crumbled within that before that if we didn't have a solid plan going into it. So especially, I feel like we often plan for success, but when things are going downhill, you need to also plan as much. I feel like when things are going poorly, I plan even more, trying to pull us up out of that tailspin. And it's hard, as you said, it's hard to like, especially when you're selling CSA shares or if you're a market, whatever you are, to like try to sell this idea of success, try to sell like prosperity when like internally you're just like crumbling down and things are going so horribly. But at the same time, you gotta show up at market and be like, oh yeah, I love it. We're killing it. You know, we're having a great time at the farm. But down deep,
can I get a deal on these radishes? No, like this is what they cost. Please buy them or don't. Speaking of radishes, we can't keep having. I grew up eating radishes. Did you guys grow up eating radishes? No?
I grew up eating.
No? Okay. Because for me, it was a normal thing. And Kaylin's looking at my production place like, why are we growing radishes? And I'm like, I don't know, because they come up early and they're easy to grow and they're fast. And like, I like them. Leave my radishes alone.
I'm sitting here like, okay, I guess I got to find a recipe for radishes. I don't know a single person who eats radishes.
Fresh right off the pat. Wash the pat.
I know, they're nice.
I do love them. They are delicious. That's where I see myself fitting into our business more, is like making sure people know how to use the food that we're growing. I can't stand food waste. So having a personal connection with people, helping them understand seasonality and that you are going to get different things from Michigan. Like you can't go to the grocery store and get strawberries all the time.
Yeah, no, I totally feel that. And like, I think that's also kind of the power of small scale farming is that, and also the power of just community based around food, is that you can then tailor things to people's needs. You know, like again, you can help with food waste by saying, you know, it's actual recipes for these things and can work through these things. Yeah, it's definitely a huge opportunity. And I find, especially as a farmer, I spend so much of my time just as an educator. And it's kind of funny is when I started farming, we were not a vegetable family. Like my grandfather had a garden, we don't help him weeds like that. But like we didn't eat vegetables. You know, we were hot dogs and mac and cheese and spaghetti. That's kind of what it was. And I remember when I first started farming, I was like, yes, we are growing arugula because I heard people liked arugula and I didn't even know what it was. And I think that's one of the big mistakes I made going into farming that I really hope that folks around me learn early, is that like you really need to understand the food community that you're being a part of and kind of the traditions and the cultures of things already happening where you're farming. And I'm lucky to say I live on the Huron River Valley. My family's been here for like 4 generations. It's like I just kind of know I'm lucky in that same way. But, you know, especially when you're going to new areas, like I see a lot of farmers who have an idea of what these people want to eat, have an idea of who lives there and what's eaten there. But really, it's just what they want to grow. And it's such a hard thing. You know, it's just like growing food's so personal, and we want to give our best and show it. But also, you gotta be like, hey, but also some people don't. Not everyone eats bok choy.
Yeah. It's got to be culturally relevant for sure.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've kind of had to, and that's part of the reason I really want to scale up and lease this bigger piece of property and have more land to do either tractor cultivation and planting or ideally draft animals eventually as well. But you know that our region, it's a lot of the meat and potatoes kind of concept, you know, which is a lot of the United States. It's a lot of like, oh yeah, green things go in the little portion next to the meat and potatoes and bread. Like that's like the plate. So, and for us, it's like, I can't charge the people around here that want to buy bags of potatoes the price that I need to charge to grow potatoes in the way that we're growing right now. Like I have to be able to do that with some sort of either horse-drawn or tractor implement to be able to plant and furrow and hill up and harvest. Like it needs to be on that kind of a scale to even compete, because it's like, well, they'll just drive the 15-20 minutes to whatever closest stores. Well, it's about 25 minutes for us to the closest like grocery store, but they'll just go there and then they can get a 10-pound bag of potatoes for whatever the price at. Way too low is what I know the price is. It's like, and they've like how low food prices can be and quote unquote should be, but then they don't look at, you know, the health of the farm, like the health of the farmer is the last thing on their mind most of the time. And it's like, well, how much have these farmers lost by being able to bring you like 50 cent, I don't even know what the prices of potatoes are, like 50 cent pounds of potatoes. You know, it's like, well, are they making money? Like, or are they just relying on subsidies and loans and getting deeper and deeper into it and telling their kids to get away from the farm and go get a job somewhere else? And, you know, I think that's a big thing. And it's like, I think on that kind of thread, it's like, not everybody likes bok choy, not everybody likes radishes, but there are ways to, I don't want to say convince people, but like to show them, like you can convince people to try it. At least you can be like, you just try this. Like, just try. I know you don't know what this Hawkeye turnip is, but trust me, just try it. Like, and then the kids' eyes light up. They're like, oh, it's sweet. You're like, yeah, it's sweet. Like vegetables can be sweet. They can be tart. They can be spicy. They can be all these things. And it's, you know, I think that's a big thing that's lacking in a lot of people's understanding of like, especially like the style of farming that we're trying to do, which is so diverse. And like, and that's one of the ways that I think that we as small scale farmers can make it through all of these hard times is by diversifying as much as possible. And like, not to the extent where you're like, oh yeah, like get this, get that, get that. And like all of a sudden you're like swamped and you don't have enough time to do chores of any sort, you know, which I've found myself in that position a few times where it's like, I do not want to go move the cows right now because I'm in the middle of 15 other things, but those cows want to get moved right now. So I'm going to do that. But it allows us to have a lot of opportunities to make other sales that create the cash flow. And even if it's not a lot, like right now, it's like, it's next week is our first market. But we've been doing just, people have been coming up to the farm because like some of our bok choy is ready. So we're just like, oh yeah, we'll sell bok choy real cheap. Or like, we've got a lot of asparagus right now. So we're like, all right, people want asparagus and rhubarb. And it's like, so we'll make like, you know, all of a sudden somebody comes up and they spend $15, $20, $30 or $40. They might buy some plants from us too. So it's, you know, it's having all those little pieces that you can kind of rely on to help pick up the slack of like the main focus of whatever you're doing. It's hard. It's so hard to juggle and it's hard to explain even to a lot of people. But like, I mean, it's kind of like the thing you were saying, like about being an entrepreneur. It's like, you have to look at every aspect of your farm in whatever situation you are in as potential ways to make money if one of the other things fail. Is how I look at it a lot.
It's the entire network of Starry Ridge products. It's not, you know, it's people are stopping there. It's people are stopping there at Starry Ridge. They, you know, if you can get them to buy the plant, they probably buy the meat. If you buy the meat, you might need to buy a radish. You need a radish, you might buy a lettuce head too. And I especially think in your environment too, you know, it's pretty rural and people are coming out there, you know, they want to stop for some local food. You know, that they're coming out there for a basket and you need to really, yeah, you need to sell it. And it's my favorite phrase. Was it sell low? Price low, sell fast. You just do the cash flow. Sometimes you get the cash flow moving, and I think that for our business, and I'm really glad you said that with the potatoes about working to bring down the cost of the product, because whether or not we want to admit it, we're producing a commodity. That's what it is. It's a potato. It's an onion. It's a head of lettuce. You know, you can. But at the same time, you know, we go buy coffee that has, let's say, moral tie-ins to it. You know, it's still a commodity though, but you know, we have things around. So why can't a head of lettuce be the same way, right? The local head of lettuce. But you said something that I liked. You said is about selling things basically as a loss leader, kind of. And I think there's something that I really realized later in my farming farming career is that for a lot of people, farms are just lost leaders for other businesses that they own. And I'm not trying to say like I have friends of mine who have a local food business, but they also have a property holding business, and they also have there's a company. They also have another small business on the side, and all they're doing is taking the gains from these other profitable businesses and pairing them with the losses of their farm. But then those businesses that don't have to turn a profit are now directly competing with the farms who are then trying to compete. It's like, it's like Amazon and Whole Foods, right? Not every grocery store has a shipping business behind it to prop up the grocery store. So I think that realization, you have to be kind to yourself because you don't know what other people's backgrounds are. And you don't know what's flowing behind those businesses in order to present, what you see on Instagram is not just someone's pure hard work and value. It's, there can be some serious dollars behind that, making that possible. Like we have a farm by us. They do just like really, really cool stuff. I love what they do. They do great community work, but the business is 100% subsidized by another enterprise. And it's something that for the longest time, I was like, man, how are they building like this? How are they scaling? How are they doing all this? And then really like, oh yeah, because they have a, $500,000 a year endowment that's flowing into this to prop it up. So I always tell people, you got to just be kind to yourself and like not compare yourself to these other businesses. It's so hard not to, especially on Instagram and,
oh my God, so hard.
Yeah, no, I mean, the same thing. We went and visited a farm up north to get some advice on these things, and they were like, yeah, it's a meat farm, right? They're doing cows, pigs, sheep, whatever. Oh, how are we doing it? It's tough. It's easier because my wife runs a 15-unit rental property business in Traverse City. Like, okay, well, it makes sense now. Like, I mean, I appreciate the hard work that you're doing, and it is hard work, but and that's really interesting what you're saying about farms being lost leaders to other businesses because it sucks. And in this whole discussion about how to use product, like, ideally, we are at the start of a transition where we change market behavior and people, start saying, I don't want those cheap potatoes. I want good potatoes. I don't want cheap this. I want good. Will it take 1,000 years, 100 years? Who knows? But I mean, at the end of the day, we live in the bosom of capitalism, and we need to use it to our advantage and try to change people's buying habits and get them to appreciate what we're doing and what we're growing and how much more worth is in it than how much it looks like on the scale. I think that's super important for us, and hopefully we can change that equation and start making some money.
Yeah, man.
I think the theme is like diversifying income streams, whether that's on the farm, outside of the farm, within your product lines. That seems to be the most stable way to make sure things keep running.
Caitlin, I totally agree with you so much. And like, you say no till there ain't no harm. What was it? There ain't no harm in part-time farming. Was that from, what's his name says that? But yeah, it's like I think the longest time growing up, like every farmer I knew, I'm just saying farmers in general, commodity, vegetable, they all work off-farm jobs. They all do. Most people I know have an off-farm job. And I think when I got into it, I was like, I'm not like those other farmers. I'm the new breed of farmer. We just work on the farm. We do this full time. You quickly realize, I'm like, man, I have all my eggs in one basket. And when this place floods and a hailstorm hits, I'm like almost lost everything. I was so, like I said, I was so non-diversified in my income streams at that time that I was so just kind of teetering, just waiting for something to happen. And now it's like, oh, I have to have, a few things flowing. And I'm lucky that they're all ag related. I get to work on other people's farms sometimes. I work on my farm. And I do some consulting every once in a while on the side. But those jobs make up like 10% of like, side income. It's not, I don't rely on it, but just that little bit on the edge just keeps things just enough more stable that I'm not so worried about losing, everything I built. Yeah. So one thing I really just want to, I'm really glad to have you guys on here to talk about is that, you have to really look at what you have access to and then act upon that. So maybe on that line, Kolin, what was your drive? What really pulled you back home to start working on the farm? What did that for you, man?
Yeah, so I grew up here in Petersburg, and when I was 20, I moved to Colorado, and I was working at the time, and then got way more involved in it in the extreme sports side of skiing and snowboarding, building terrain parks. So I started traveling a lot and doing that and working seasonal jobs and, having a lot of fun in your 20s and living in the back of a truck and, all that kind of stuff. Travel. I moved around the world for jobs and picked up whatever I could pick up and just diversified in that aspect where it's like I wouldn't turn down a job and then until I found a better job, and you just have to work because I moved away when I was 20. I moved to Colorado with my Jeep Cherokee Sport and like $600 and my first month's rent paid at the place I was living. And that was all I had. And it was all because I raised a few pigs and sold 2 of the pigs right before I left. It was like the day I left, I was butchering pigs and selling it. My friends and neighbors who are still some of them are still CSA members. And it's like, it's, you've got to be able to look so deep into the future. And even back then, I knew that I was going to move back here one day. For family reasons, my brother had kids and my parents are getting older and everywhere else is just so expensive. And I was living out west where there's no water. But you can't do what I want to do here easily. And also land is just crazy expensive. So that was a huge drive for me was, family, of course, the natural, opportunities that are here with the seasonal shift. So you do get those breaks in the season. You do get the pest breaks, you get die off from that. And lots of water. I mean, we've got water spouting out of every part of our hillside, which is super cool for pond building, and all of our water that comes through our house is all gravity fed spring lines. So there's no on any water on our entire property. But it was a lot of that kind of stuff and looking towards kind of like Simon was starting to say it before about kind of changing the mentality of what we're doing and the food that we're producing. And, it's hard around here. And I've noticed it a lot. I mean, a lot of these people I've known since I was a little kid, a lot of these older folks that stop by just to say hi or see me down at the store and ask what weird stuff I'm doing. Why am I out there every day moving your cows? Why do you move the cows every day? It's well, because then they get fresh grass and it takes them off of the piece that they were just on. It gives it time to regenerate, so it's a lot of those conversations, but I really have seen a shift even in just some of the people that I've dealt with personally. And now they're asking more questions, and they're interested in it. And you do give them a bunch of radishes, or you do give them a Hawkeye turnip, or a head of lettuce. And you're like, oh yeah, try this out. Or oh, here, try this ham steak and see what you think. Oh, that was the best, whatever. I can't believe that was so tasty. I appreciate it. It's just seems like you're working awfully hard for it though. It's well, I am, but this is what we get from it, and I think that there's a huge shift towards that. And I do think that over the next few years, we're going to see a lot more of that, especially with younger farmers, and younger people in general, understanding it more and having organic options that people have thought about. And, however you feel about whatever, diet or food restrictions people put on themselves. I mean, there's a lot more understanding of where the food is coming from and how your dollars spent towards that are affecting not just you and the health of your food and your health, but also the health of certain types, certain farmers that are trying to do this, or certain people that are trying to raise animals this way or whatever, So I think a lot of the reason I really did want to move back was to help facilitate that shift in some way. And also, just be closer to family and hopefully push this farming things so that we can all be living high on the hog one day, you know?
That's really beautiful. I was going to say, like, your Instagram is amazing too. And just being active on there and showing people, it helps communicate exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. So it's wonderful. Thank you for doing what you do.
Oh yeah. Thank you guys. I mean, it's not, none of it's easy, and taking it on is just like such a, you can feel it. It's like a rush. It's like you just jumped off of a cliff, and it's like, and there's that feeling of like, just everything builds up. And especially this time of the year, this time of year is crazy because like it's lighter, longer, and everything's growing so fast. But yeah, I mean, there's literally no better way to spend every single day, whether you're making money that day or not, than hands in the dirt and really just feeling that connection with your community and with your fellow farmers around, whatever type of farming they do. It's just such a cool area. Simon was saying that he lived in the Hudson Valley at one point, and this region is just so beautiful for so many different reasons, and the agricultural life around here is just awesome. And there are some really just like the OG of OG organic gardeners around here, and farmers and people tucked into hillsides that you would never know that they're there, but they're all around.
Isn't Neversink up there? Is he in Maine?
No, he's in New York. He's like an hour and a half probably south of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a bunch of other ones. There's just so many cool farms around here. Some that you may have never heard of, some that you might, and it's just like there's so many people doing so many cool things and so many different styles of it too. And even within this market garden kind of concept, or like the smaller scale kind of stuff, there's so many cool opportunities for like education as well, which is cool. Actually, the town next to us, Soulfire Farm, is there, and they do a lot of really cool work. And they do a lot of produce into the city, into Albany and Troy. But they have a ton of workshops and stuff, and a ton of like reconnecting people to the land on their farm. And it is just epic. And they've done some really cool stuff, and they put on little festivals throughout the summer and get people out onto the land and like work days with everybody. So yeah, it's just such a beautiful region. And there are so many people that are super dedicated to this type of farming. There's a lot of people that don't even know it exists. They'll go buy their breakfast, lunch, and dinner from Stewart's, which is a gas station kind of place around here. But they got really good ice cream. But you can't survive off of that stuff. And it's, I mean, you can, but it's like, is that really surviving, or is that just like, I don't know. Maybe it's surviving, but it's certainly not thriving. And I'd like to see more thriving in the area for sure. Mm-hmm. Actually, Simon had brought up I think you said it was Michigan Farm Link. Is that what you said earlier, Simon? I think.
Sorry, correct. Yes, Michigan Farm Link.
Yeah, cool, man. Yeah, that's something that like I really think those kind of opportunities should be. We need to figure out a way in our community to connect with people like that, and to connect people to those opportunities. Because I really do, and like Alex was saying, like all of a sudden he becomes a farmer, everybody's got farmland for him, it's like, and that's kind of like the position that I'm kind of in too, where it's like, oh yeah, well I've got 5 acres here, I've got 10 acres there, and it's like, well, I can't take on all of them, but if there's a way that we can link other people to it, which is hard because you kind of need somebody relatively local or somebody that's willing to move to the area for it a lot of the time. But yeah, I think those kind of opportunities for people are really cool. And I think that's something that it would be great to find ways to increase that outreach more.
The one thing I keep hearing from today's conversation is like the power of community relationships. It's just like having yourself fully fully invested in the local food community. And as someone like after there's so much headache of dealing with people, but on top of that headache is so much good community building and so much good opportunity for growth and for learning. And to often remind myself that, because I think as farmers it's so easy to kind of pull back, do our own thing. But I find every minute I put myself out and I ask for something, or I put myself in the community and just go to things like, I got invited to a farm festival. I did not want to go. I was so tired. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go. I'm just going to make it happen. And I went there and I got so many opportunities just talking to people from this day. And I was half exhausted, but I'm like, man, I can't believe I almost didn't go to that. Every time I go, I meet someone new who's like doing something amazing right down the street from me I had never known about. And whether it's leasing land or it's, or finding connections to sell your product to, like, I feel like the only way we can really survive, especially against all of these odds of high interest rates, expensive land, is that community engagement and those connections to try and figure out where we fit in the local food marketplace and really, hold each other arm by arm and do it together.
Yeah. Kolin had to come to a bit of a coming to Jesus moment with that as well. And being able to ask people for things and also to sell them things without, feeling guilty about it, and maybe she wants to say something about that.
I mean, I work in advertising and we're selling cars, so it's a little different when you're selling somebody like something nutritious and that they need.
Yeah. You don't want to charge them for it. You want to give it to them, right?
Yeah.
But,
the community thing is like dead on. Everybody has been so nice. Like, and there's so many resources. I think most of our journey started, like, I went to an MSU extension event and then that leads somewhere. And everybody's always like willing to connect you with somebody who they think could help you. And it's just very funny to be like where we are now. And we live in a community where we're trying to start up a farmer's market. And so that we can have that connection to food again. The community is amazing. I
totally agree with you, Kolin. And I feel like, and I'm not gonna, this is not like a generational thing like that, but I think just especially the newer growers, the young growers, we kind of realize that like there's no existence without connection, or there's no existence without that working together on certain extents. Like, I remember when I first started farming at the markets I was at, I mean, the amount of, let's say, cooperation was so low. Everyone was so siloed and was so competitive mindset. It was like you'd have 4 farmers all selling the same product from a source, but instead of working together and do that same source, they're all doing this, driving it to 4 times, I'll do this thing. And as soon as COVID hit, as soon as everything came back from COVID, all of these growers all started working together again. It was amazing to see like a transformation in our local community of people being like, oh man, I can't do this alone. And I have to work with other people, and just seeing that compounding effect. And I really think just a mindset change. I'm not going to say it's a young person thing. I think all people of all ages work together, but I feel like, especially when you have your coming into this industry with so little, I think the only way we can even make this work is if we compound our labor, and really, raise the tide for all ships. I say all the time, like, I have no problem marketing. Like, we do an ad grade CSA. I have no problem like sending my customers to somebody else to get something, if they or to advertise somebody else in my CSA. And I hope they order sweet corn from me, and I hope when they need extra, they go up to the farm stand that sells it and grab some more, because like I need them to stay in business for the next 100 years so that I can stay in business for the next 50. You know what I mean? But we sort of think of things as more as systems and not as so individually mindseted. And me personally, when I got into farming, the American farming mindset is already pretty individualistic, but I came into it so heavily thinking, I have to do everything. I can't work with other people. I don't. Competition's bad, or my competition, is keeping away from me. And now it's like, man, the more I work with other people around me, I don't know, the more prosperity I found. And like you said, I feel like those of us who especially came into the industry and I would say we're not like openly welcomed. Now when we see other growers come into it, all we want are for them to do well. Like all we want is to not like, oh, we want them to lift them up because like, if we lift them up and they do amazing, they'll bring bring each other with them. So it kind of seems like a win-win at this point. So I really appreciate you all talking with me. Maybe we'll do like one last thing and we'll roll out. Is there anything that you want folks to know, any motivation, anything you want to say to folks as they're entering the new farm season? Any words of advice, anything like that?
I was like, Kolin, you go first. You have much more experience. I don't need the advice. I'm the one who needs the advice.
Yeah, that's really like nothing ever is going to go to plan. And like, even when it does end up kind of like working out, you're like, boy, there was a lot of opportunities for that to fail. So, take those failures and just learn from them and understand that, even if it is your fault, like it's also kind of not your fault because there's so much going on. There's so many little details that, I mean, it just hurts my brain most of the time thinking about it. You wake up in the morning, you're like, oh no, what am I going to do today? Like, I almost want to just like lay down right when I wake up first thing. And it's just like, you just can't give up and you got to keep looking forward and just be excited about it because it is just so fun. And it is, even after years, like I said, Kat and I are going into our 5th year. Well, now we feel like we're really into it already at this point, but, there's so many little tidbits that you can learn from, even when it's not like a failure or anything like that. Like even just how you go about your day or for us, we live on our farm. So it's like everything is our farm. Like every single moment that I wake up, do everything. And even if it's not a profitable thing, like it's still something that's building towards the future of what I would like to create out of, my existence on this land and give opportunities for other people as well. Just keep at it. Like there's just no shortage of things to do. And there's no night that you're going to go to bed thinking that it's all good. Like, oh, we absolutely crushed it today. We got it all done. Every night I'm just like, well, I didn't get that done. And I didn't get that done. Just don't think too much about that. Keep your mind and just motor forward and just keep on keeping on. There's really nothing else you can do until November.
Would love to hear what you guys do to unwind from the season.
Well, we usually try to escape for a little bit during the winter, which we don't get to a ton, but a little bit here and there. We went down to Mexico last year, which was cool. And Kat and I are both really into scuba diving. So the first couple of years we would do like scuba diving trips and we got like our dive master one year, which was really cool. And then we like traveled around Central America for a little while after that. And, but that was when we were first starting out and things seemed so much easier. And we've been complicating things more and more every year for some reason.
Oh, man. And something you said in there, that Kolin, that I think really, really caught me is you kind of like, there's something out of your control. There's something you cannot control. And during my flood, a CSA member messaged me and she said, hey, I know times are tough, but be kind to yourself. And that's something I keep in my head all the time because like, I just get so in my own head and get so angry at things that I mess up and the things that aren't on my control and just kind of weighs on me so heavily because I care. And I love my community. I love my farm. I love producing food. It's so hard not to take personal. But whenever I'm like down and a crop doesn't go well, I just tell myself now, just be kind to yourself. It's okay. It's fine. This is part of growing. This is part of learning. It's going to be okay. So I think that's I heard that and I heard hey, let it go to bed. Tomorrow we'll hit it hard again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely, man. That's all you can do. It
really is. It really is. Well, I think we're going to log off. Simon and Caitlin, anything you want to add before we end this up?
Yeah, I mean, on your note, I was going to say ask for help. I mean, if I didn't ask people, I wouldn't have met you, Alex, because for those who don't know, I went to a conference with Caitlin, the Farm Stop conference in Ann Arbor, and this is not an exaggeration. Like 6 people are like, "Oh, you should talk to Alex Ball." Like,
yeah, you're a celebrity, you're a local celebrity.
Oh, don't tell me that.
There's no. There's really something to it, and it's like ask for help. I would tell people to ask for help, because if I didn't ask for help, I would never met you. And just knowing you and looking at what you're doing has given us so much hope and inspiration for what we want to do. So ask for help, and then when people ask you for help, don't say no. Do whatever you can to help them, even if you're too busy. Just go do it.
That's fantastic. Caitlin, anything else you want to add to that?
I didn't know how much prioritization would play a part in farming, but everything you've said, Kolin, is just like there are endless lists of to-dos, but you got to be able to hit the biggest ones first.
Move the cows. Gotta move the cows.
Gotta move the cows.
That's like, because Kat, sometimes she'll like get frustrated where it's like, and it's totally my fault a lot of the time, where it's just like all of a sudden, like we've got the next day planned out, and like we are like, yeah, we got this all figured out. I'm like totally screw it up.
Yeah, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that.
I'm going with this, or like or all of a sudden it's like here we're like somebody asked me to do a job, and it's like, oh, I got to go do this tree job tomorrow. Like I know that tomorrow's we're doing all this stuff, but like I have to go do this tree job because it's 4 or 5 hours out of my life. But we're making way more money than we're going to make with me being here right now. And and asking people, and there's I know enough people around here where it's like when I need help, I call those people that needed me to do something 4 months ago. And I'm like, hey, do you still need that done? Because it's February and I've got no money left. And I feel this is like carpentry job right now. So yeah, man, asking people for help. You can't say enough about that, dude. That is
shame in it. There's never any shame in it.
Man, that's the message today, right? Ask for help. When you need it, you reach out. You have to. I really appreciate you all taking time out of your busy schedule, sit down and talk to me today about this. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate it.
Our pleasure.
This was fun.
Yeah, guys, it was nice meeting you guys. And I definitely wish you guys all the luck, and I hope your guys' season's awesome.
Next time I'm up in Vermont, I hope we can come visit. I'd love to see your place.
Oh, yeah. Anytime, guys. You guys are totally welcome. Whenever.
Huge thanks to all 3 of my guests for sitting down and sharing their stories, businesses, and words of wisdom with all of us. The pathway to maintaining a farm business is not an easy one, but I believe feeding my community and working the land to be the most rewarding career carries me through hard times. It motivates me to be better and constantly improve. In my own experiences and what I hear over and over again is the power of community building and what you can accomplish when you simply ask for what you need. You can't do this alone. You have to surround yourself with like-minded people who want to see you succeed. Farming is tough work, and making the lifestyle business sustainable long-term is extremely hard to do. But when I'm not on the farm or patching CSA shares, I feel like a little something is missing from me that can only be found when I'm back in the farm with my hands in the soil. Thanks so much for listening, y'all. Until next time, have a great day.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Real quick, some things that we have going on. Make sure you are following along over at YouTube. Last week, we discussed contouring versus terracing with Spencer Rudolph of Sage Hill Ranch Gardens. Far and away the steepest farm I've seen in person, but also one of the most productive. This week, we are diving into overwintered alliums with Evan Chender of The Culinary Gardener. Everything from leeks to green garlic and getting those things early. Some definite nerd candy there. Find that channel by searching No-Till Growers on YouTube. We'll put a link in the show notes, and also linked in the show notes is our shop where you can find the Living Soil Handbook and hats and other merch. Buying those things through us helps to support our work and helps keep this information free and open to anyone. Alternatively, you can join a whole bunch of new supporters through patreon.com/no-till growers. And who also get a bunch of discounts from various companies on seeds and footwear and all sorts of other goodies. That Patreon page is the absolute lifeblood of our work, and we dearly appreciate you. And at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, you get a shout out in the show. So big shout outs this week to Daniela Williams, Chris Yates, Sean at All About the Garden, Stephen Smith, and Cameron Prybull. Huge shout out to whoever supports us in whatever way that you can. Otherwise, thanks for listening, y'all. We'll catch you next week. Bye.